Welcome back to our lovely footy nerds. Round 2 done and dusted. But before we get into the footy, Mitch, myself and you had a great weekend. We had our first Reboot launch or event at Reborn Cronulla with Travis Young, and we collabed with Big Trent Marin and a few of the ex-NRL players. Obviously, Zach Lomax, Gareth Whittaker involved in Freeze Yourself. Them boys weren't there, but it was a success. It was good. Who would have thought two former rat bags get a group of men and women together at a gym on Saturday morning and do a workout. And Trent done his keynote speech, and then we've done some question and answers about our program. I'm proud this morning. I'm very proud. I was proud flying home yesterday. How'd you feel?
Yeah, bro. It was exactly how I felt. Exactly the same. Very proud. Like you just said, we've obviously been working on this idea around Reboot for a while now, and the whole idea of setting it up in the first place was sort of taking people on the journey that we're on. Obviously, we made plenty of changes and seen plenty of growth through some work that we've done. So we want to set up a platform for other people to be able to find that light however they can. So to actually put on the day at the gym, and then, even when we're doing our Q&A and having a chat and how engaged everyone was, I felt pretty proud, man. So it's great to do it with my mate, and there's so much more ahead of us in that space. But yeah, it was, what was the most rewarding thing, Toddy? It was just the training session before, when everyone was just ripping in and like really showing respect. When it's actually your own thing that you organise, and to see people so engaged, it makes you feel pretty special, doesn't it? And we're very grateful for all those people that came along and supported us for our first Reboot kickoff.
Yeah, well, it's, as we sort of spoke about before the event started, it's about getting vulnerable, and there's not many harder places to get vulnerable when you're training. You've met a person for the first time. I know the two guys I trained with, it's the first time I ever met them. They were in struggle street. They were hurting.
It's a tough sesh.
And they were looking at me, and like, obviously we had to get, as Trav set up, you had to get the 10 cals on the bike, and a few times they didn't get it, and you could see them like looking as if to go, like, if they were worried. Like, then it was for me, it was obviously what we know how to train, and we know how to dig deep, but also then the ice bus is a challenge. Like, my missus is still laughing about, like, she could never do it. She said she would never do it in her whole life, and it just goes to show that, like, if you put yourself in a position to do that, and but then what I liked about it is, obviously, myself and you spoke, Trent spoke really well, and we had one of our first ever clients do Reboot get up and speak, and the emotion he showed and the rawness that come out, it shows that we're doing a good thing. And obviously we've got many more steps to go, many more mountains to climb in our own journey, but I think if we can continue on this platform and continue on this journey to get better at what we do in our own lives, we'll make our program a whole lot better. And the exciting thing from yesterday on Saturday is that we've had schools reach out, and that's our big next step, is to try and build a program that would suit a school. What kind of demographic of the school that would be is unsure yet, but it's exciting that we're making waves in those areas, because as we both know, that it doesn't start. For us, it started at 36, my change. But if we can tap into young women, young men at that high school, pre-high school, and tailor our program to them, who knows what difference we can make. And then obviously, as you spoke about, and I'd like you to touch on it, is about the journey of a young rugby league player, what it's like. For me, I left home at 15 and 16. You work with a lot of young kids in the Roosters that come from the Gold Coast or come from different places. The country kids is a big one for me, because I'm that kid. I want you to touch on what it's like for that young kid that moves out of home and comes to Sydney and being a part of the club at the Roosters. As we know, Sydney's is a whole different beast. I didn't know what Sydney was like until the first day I walked in and seen your face. But I want you to touch on something that you're passionate about and you want to try and sort of dive into with our program.
Yeah, obviously, for the listeners, obviously Toddy just touched a bit on the vision of getting into schools. We want to set up some online programs. Obviously, the one-on-ones with our counsellors. We've got a team of obviously our business partner Philip, who's the three of us at the moment, who's a counsellor, but he's getting a couple of other guys on board from the counselling point of view. But I had a really good chat with a lady when I was down the South Coast. My grandma lives down there. Went down there for a couple of days, and this lady, she runs one of the caravans down there, and she was chatting about her son actually plays lower grades at Canberra, similar path to you, Toddy, down there, and she spoke about how great the idea of what we're doing. She was really supportive of Reboot, but she said there's a really big market, she thinks, for young players coming down and transitioning, like we just said, country kids that are coming into a system, put into a house. They're getting obviously plenty of love from the club. They've got contracts, but are they really taught how to live their lives? Are they taught their routines away from the game? They haven't got their mum and dad around as much, so who's really teaching them that deeper side to stuff? We know with clubs, obviously, once you crack the NRL and you make the big time, you're getting a lot of attention. But it's those kids that are sort of on the verge. If footy doesn't go well for them, what does life look like? Are they studying properly? And it's not only what they're studying or what their other goals are outside of footy. It's the disappointment if they don't make it and how that's going to have a rebound effect. So that's where we feel that Reboot can have a really good market for those kids to understand their patterns. We speak a lot about in Reboot the good and the bad stuff of success, and a lot of stuff that we got into some bad holes was from a lack of understanding of the patterns of behaviour and the limiting beliefs and that type of stuff. So our program's based around a lot of that, and it'd be a great place to get into that transition, or those younger kids in not only rugby league but in sport that are you're still finding your way. So yeah, let's see where it goes with us. But yeah, there's so much opportunity out there, and Toddy touched on it in the talk on the weekend that our drive more than anything is just to be of service and pass on all the stuff that we've learned, good and bad, and hopefully we can help plenty of people.
Yeah, and if there's anyone that joined us on Saturday, listening here or watching this morning, we say thank you for coming. Your effort and turning up makes us feel proud today. And you spoke about good and bad, Mitch, and over the round two on the weekend, some good and bad performances for some teams. After the weekend, I was sitting there last night watching over my notes, and I had myself scratching my head. It's actually got me rethinking my top eight. And it's also got me thinking, is the comp as tight, as far wide as we first thought after round one? Like, is it back to level playing field again after round two's performances? Like, there's some upsets, but then on the other scale, are they upsets?
For me, I think the top four is still pretty solid. That's from my own opinion. I still think, obviously, Melbourne had the week off, but they're red-hot favourites still for me. Penrith, they've had an off day, haven't they? But I think Penrith have still got enough, even with their comeback, that they're going to be thereabouts, right up the top of the ladder. Broncos, that was a surprise. I had them in my top four. I haven't changed that, but they've got an inconsistency problem. There's still some underlining issues there that I just think that they were still going to come up at the start of the year. Obviously, Madge has taken over, and we saw big improvement in round one, but they'll get there. But it was another example that their road's not going to be smooth the whole start of the year. Cronulla, for me, they're flying along nicely. The last 2 years they have as well. Are they going to be there when it counts? The bottom eight, Dragons, for me, I still think are a real red-hot chance of making the eight. Even though they fell short on the weekend, they're playing some really, really good footy. We spoke about it last week about their discipline issues and just being able to really suffocate teams. That's a problem for them. But I also spoke about Flanagan and his influence, and you can see the growth in their team. I think they'll get there in those arm wrestles. So if they can squeeze into the eight, I think their biggest competition around there is obviously Newcastle, Canberra. I think Manly's still a couple of steps ahead of those sides. as well. So I'm just throwing heaps of clubs out there, but
you're throwing some names at me.
But that's sort of where it's at. I think
exactly. This is what I wanted when I asked you this question. I wanted to, because if you ask a punter, they're going to be saying the same thing, or like blokes that are out there scratching their heads about their mouldies this week. And another big point from the weekend: two of the games were the only that didn't get over 32 points. Like, where's that's another topic to talk about. Like, so is it the attack, or is it the defense, or is it the game that Abdo and Volandis are sitting in their offices this morning rubbing their hands going, this is the game we want. This is the excitement level we want. We want it to get to the most exciting level possible. And like the scores over the first week, we spoke about the high 50s. But if you look over the games on the weekend, Newcastle 26, Warriors 36, Roosters 38, South 25, Sharks 36, Raiders 32, Tigers 32, Bulldogs 40. Like, and we talk about sometimes, yes, you've got to score points to win games, but then some of them games, they're leaking over 20 points. So scoring 30-something, leaking 20-something. So is that a concern, or is that just the way the game's going to go now?
With the
6 against? You go.
So swings in momentum, isn't it? Like, I use the Manly game as an example. I think there was around 11 6 against that Manly gave away. We spoke about Manly last week about when momentum's going for them and how ruthless they are when the foot's on the throat. They've got these amazing players in their spine that can play off the front foot and just pile points on. But the side effect to that, the alternative to that, is when things aren't going well and they have an ill-disciplined game, refs against them, playing away from home. Refs normally got the momentum of the home ground advantage. All of a sudden we see such a lopsided result from week to week. And you can say that about a lot of teams. So I think your statement about Volandis and Abdo, I think, is definitely the rule changes have definitely made a massive difference. The 6 agains now have definitely opened the game up from a more attacking point of view, and everyone agrees with that. People have spoke about that a lot over the last couple of years, but it's just that foot on the throat's not as common now, is it? Because you give away a couple of 6 agains, you have a little bit of an off day with you. A couple of players have a bit of an off day defensively, and all of a sudden you're on the back foot for 20 minutes. So yeah, the game has definitely taken a turn. You wouldn't have seen these sort of results or these swings in momentum as much 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago when we were coming in, especially against the top sides. But it is great to watch. It's an enjoyable style of footy, I think. It makes it unpredictable, and I think, to answer your question from an NRL's point of view, I'm sure they want that. They want the competition close. They want action and all-out attack so that the fans are on the edge of their seats, and I think that's the sort of style of footy that we're seeing now. It is so hard to predict, though, because you come in with a bit of fatigue from a team, you're playing away, even though you're the favourites and things don't go your way early, all of a sudden you're 20-0 down and it's game on. So, and we're seeing that so often.
Yeah. Do you think there's merit in clubs and teams now, or more so coaches, when you've got your momentum, do you change the way you attack? Or when you don't have the momentum, how do you swing your momentum back? Is it through your long kicking game? We're going to touch on that with the Titans later. Is it through a big tackle? Is it through, or when you've got the momentum, how do you keep the momentum flowing? Is it by like strangling them, then scoring points, or is it just trying to lap as many points as you can when you've got that momentum? Like, we'll also touch on this when we talk on the Dragons. They're up 24-12. All of a sudden, South swing the momentum back. Do you just have to time the momentum, or is there a call? Can there be a call come from the sideline saying you're about to lose momentum because they've completed 3 sets? Like, I know when I talk about schoolboy level stuff, history shows if you complete 3 sets, the 4th time you get a set, you'll score points. So we're modelling our game on that. Complete 3 sets, and history shows history shows Roosters should have got beat on the weekend. So it's not always doesn't always work that way. But the way the game's going, do you reckon will they look that deep into how you swing momentum to actually get points back? Or if you're in the game and you're down by 12, you're still in the fight. Like it's not over.
Yeah, well, I think nothing changes as far as games are still built off defence, good kicking game, and high completions. And your analogy there around completing 3 or 4 sets in a row to get yourself back into the game is 100% right. And all the NRL clubs would be speaking about that. You know, post errors, post tries, it would be about completing your next 3 to 5 sets, getting back into momentum and kicking well. But I still think at the core of all these games, you've got to defend as good as anyone. You still got to be in that top 2 in defence to win week to week and win a comp. Your long kicking game, you keep talking about long kicking game, but that's become so vital in today's game more than ever. With the short kickoffs, the short kicking game now, giving the opposition a chance to get it back with the short dropouts. There's not as much of a focus as it was 5 years ago on that. It's still important to build pressure, but those long kicking games and winning the arm wrestle is so important now. And high completions, you know, we see the teams that shoot themselves in the foot on the weekend, Broncos, Manly, Penrith, it was poor execution from them that we didn't see in round one. So completions are still, high completions, great defence, and a long, good, consistent kicking game that pins the opposition in their 10-metre zone is still at the core of success, I think, in the game today. And I just think though that it also gives you just spoke about being behind. There's more hope, I think, for teams nowadays with the new rule change of having a comeback than there was 5 years ago, because you know that if you can find a quick couple of play the balls, get a couple of repeat sets, all of a sudden, points follow pretty fast. Without the 6 again rule, it was harder to create that momentum in a short period of time. So, there's a lot of change, and it is an exciting brand of footy, but it'd be a tough style of footy week to week, because it's unless you're ticking those boxes week to week and being super disciplined, you're every chance of getting your pants pulled down against a side that's either at the top of the ladder or the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah, then that can sort of lead me to the next topic. Does that come down through attitude, or is it just because the team, like for instance, Canberra Broncos, like when I spoke about this last week, I said I bleed green, so I was going to go with Canberra for an upset, but it was like they just went there and they hunted them. They obviously outplayed them, but is that where it's at? You've got to be on every week.
100%. Like, I think that's been there since the early days of rugby league, hasn't it? Where your attitude has to be right. But yeah, you can tell straight away in the first 5-10 minutes of a game nowadays where the teams are at. I was at the Newcastle Dolphins game live, and I could see in the first 10 minutes with obviously the Knights, the way the Knights ran out of the sheds to take the field with a home ground advantage in their first couple of sets compared to the Dolphins, you could just tell that it was their night, and it was through effort areas, their kick chases, just the way that they were getting back to the 10-metre line and taking off to make their tackles. Like, just all those little attitude effort areas, you can tell straight away where a team's at and where their head's at. And no doubt in the world, the team that is the most connected and has the best attitude week to week wins. There's obviously so many challenges through a season, playing away, dealing with stuff off the field, media attention, players in and out of injuries, players off contract, all these things. But that's what makes the winning clubs and the best coaches better than the rest, because they're able to galvanise their group and get them up week after week. And we see that year after year as well.
Yeah, well, you touched on that, Robbo, didn't you, last week when we spoke about the Roosters? You said that one thing that Robbo will have to his advantage, he knows how to get his group up, and that was the case against the Broncos. Sixes and Sevens is brought to you by Property 360.
Property 360 offers a complete property acquisition service designed to deliver quantifiable results for investors.
Their team of passionate acquisition advisors provides privileged insights and conducts thorough market analysis to secure the best real estate deals for you and your property portfolio.
As the preferred partner of NRL players and staff, Property 360 has a proven track record of helping clients grow their wealth beyond life on the field.
Head to property360.com.au to find out more.
Sixes and Sevens is brought to you by Good Day Daily Multivitamins.
If you're looking to take your health a little more seriously and you're not quite sure where to start, Good Day is simple and effective way to get yourself essential vitamins and minerals.
Packed with over 60 health benefits and 100% of your B vitamins, it's the easiest way to feel good fast.
With a delicious passion fruit taste, just pour one sachet into water and you're good to go.
Head to begoodhealth.com.au. Use the code HALVES for 10% off your order. Pair that with a subscription for a 20% discount. It's the least you could do.
Before we get into the games, I want to talk about the worrying signs of the four teams that haven't registered a win yet. And I know it's early doors, like it's round 2. They'll be both sitting. Them 4 teams will be sitting in their team rooms today, talking about it's only round 2. We've shown glimpses, but the Dragons, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, and Eels, both haven't registered a win. From a coach's point of view, is there coaches out there that don't have a job doing this, rubbing their hands and licking their lips, or do you think they're safe? And I like talking about this topic because the fans of obviously these clubs would be there going, "Oh, get rid of the coach. It's the coach's issue." Like, where do you see? Like, obviously, all the coaches have got different. Obviously, the 2 of the teams, the Dolphins have got new coaches or new coach. The Eels have got a new coach. So you think they're safe. The Cowboys and Dragons. Flano's in his second year, obviously, the Dragons, but I can see, obviously, growth. But for the one I'm trying to single out is the Cowboys. I want to touch on all of them. Do you think they're safe? But, where's it at for them?
Yeah, I just touched on the Dragons potentially making the 8 or just around that 8. They've obviously had 2 tough games to start the season. I like what I see in the Dragons. I keep saying I think Shane Flanagan's a good coach. I haven't had much to do with him, but I think he's a hard coach, and I think I can see what he's doing there. Even in their losses, I think their discipline and ability to really mount pressure is a little bit off. But once they get that nailed, some of their shifts, especially that left edge with Gutherson and Valentine Holmes, Leilua on that edge, they look really dangerous. They had a couple of nice plays on the other side. They're in the fight, and there's plenty of positives there. So I can see them coming good in a few weeks. Like I said, they've had some tough games to start the year. Parramatta in all sorts, let's be honest. But Rilesy's just taken over. He looks really calm in press conferences, Rilesy. I've watched a couple of the press conferences after games, and he's obviously been around the traps a long time, and he's probably prepared himself how he's going to act and behave through wins and losses. So he's handling it with a lot of composure at the moment, which I think is a great sign. Coming off the back of some, let's be honest, a very poor start, but they're in the horrors, Para.
The fans are booing Dylan Brown, which is a poor look. At the end of the day, he's still a Parramatta player. He puts that jersey on to perform. He's not going to Newcastle to next year, and I like Newcastle starting to push that chat aside. Kalen spoke a little bit about it and said we've got a whole year to play without Dylan Brown. Let's not talk about him. And I think for Dylan Brown, he'd like that at the Eels too. Obviously, they've got to register wins for that to go away. The noise will never go away, and for Dylan Brown, the noise is never going to go away now for the next 11 years because the length and the amount of his contract, which we've spoken about a fair bit. I wanted to go back to the Dragons bit when you said that their ability to mount pressure, because I know there'd be Dragons fans listening. When you say ability to mount pressure, does that fall on what player? Does that fall on the 6 and 7, or does it fall on they're just a game manager from their 9 even?
I think it falls a lot on the 6 and 7. Being able to speak about that long game. Go back to the game against the Dogs where the difference between that game was Burton's kicking game, where he constantly put the ball in that 10-metre box in the on the corner of the field continuously all game, and the Bulldogs mount a lot of pressure with their kick chase and then their markers and then their +3 defence. Yeah, I think the whole team mentality of the Dragons needs to be more around applying pressure and building their game off discipline. I'm sure they're talking about it, but you said, does it come back on the halves? Well, yeah, in big games, I think it definitely does. Cookie's got a big part of that to play as well as a senior player in and around the spine. But yeah, I think that's going to be the thing that holds them back if they can't really apply pressure when they're in those real arm wrestles against the better teams. But there's potential there in the Dragons for sure. Out of those 4 sides you just mentioned, for me, they're definitely the pick of the bunch. You spoke about Para and the pressure on Dylan Brown. They've got to let that go. The guys picked up a deal that was put on the table for him, and as we said last week, good on him. He's sorted himself out and his family. He's a terrific player. Is he going to be the right guy as a 7 and to build their club around? We'll wait and see. Did his form on the weekend sort of give people hope that he can be that game manager? Probably not. There was a comment after the game that Rylesy also sort of tried to nip the comments in the butt in the press conference around Dylan Brown and all the hype around it, and he basically said that Dylan will play better when there's other people put in and around him. So it's probably not what the Knights want to hear when you're meant to be the guy that's taking control. But we know this. We know he's a 6, and the Knights have gone and invested in him. So that's for next year. For the now, the Parramatta side, don't worry about Dylan Brown. Don't worry about Mitch Moses. They need to sort out their resilience and their defence, because at the moment they look quite lost.
The other 2 teams that we haven't touched on, one of them is a big concern, is the Cowboys and the Dolphins. The Dolphins not so much. I think they've got enough strike and ability to make a shift. Like, they were close against South round 1. On the weekend, they didn't look interested. But the Cowboys are obviously, Payton dropped Jeremiah Neno last week. Does he do the same again this week and drop someone, a big name? Obviously, Tamalolo will come back into that team this week for round 3. Played for the Cutters on the weekend. Where do you see that ending?
Yeah, well, the worrying sign for the Cowboys is how passive they are in defence. Like, you see some of the tries Cronulla scored, and Cronulla looks sharp. They're big, they're strong, they've got great outside backs, their halves are good, they've got a great pack. Like, they're a top 4 side that's well ahead of where the Cowboys are at the moment. But the Cowboys have leaked close to 70 points in the opening rounds, and then you add on the trials. I know it's only trials and they had younger boys, but they lost a 50-point loss to the Dolphins in their trial games. Like, that's a lot of defensive trauma in 3-4 weeks for a club.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Todd Payton drops one of his best players, who's a rep player last week, Nene. Like, when you're starting to make these kind of moves and then you're still getting this type of response, like, there's something going wrong there, and the messages defensively aren't getting through. It's obviously frustrating. Toddy Payton, he's dropping one of your best players and your rep players is to make a statement.
Correct. Yeah.
But then what do you do this week? Do you go and drop 2 other rep players? Because the defense was exactly the same. They were quite passive. They were very passive. Their efforts on transitions as well. Cronulla had a couple of quick moments. There was a 7-tackle quick tap there that they just went close to the length of the field. There was a break on a kick return, just going straight through the middle of the ruck. Like, just little transition things. They're not amounting pressure with the ball, and defensively they're too passive. So it's a really worrying sign for the Cowboys, and how they get out of it, who knows? They need to have a big performance next week, that's for sure. It's going to keep mounting pressure on Toddy Payton.
Yeah, well, enough of that. Enough of the sad news. We'll move on to our reviews of games and how we thought and what our thoughts were. And you were live at this game up in Newcastle. You made the drive up to sell one of your 100 houses, which is good. Well done, mate. Newcastle 26, Dolphins 12. KP, obviously on the end of everyone's tip of everyone's tongue every week after he plays. And we spoke about it a few weeks ago, the eye of the tiger, and the way he's playing. But on the weekend, we talk about Dylan Brown going to the Newcastle Knights and who will game manage. Kalen Ponga can game manage. I know we've tried him at 6, but I haven't really tried him at 7. I'm not saying he's going to be a 7, but on the weekend he took pressure off his halves. Obviously, Cogger took most of the control of the kicking, a lot of the kicking game, but when it was needed, KP stepped up and produced again in big moments. Like round 1, he produced in moments in coming out of his own in goals. But on the weekend, he had his hand in everything, and he just was in everything. Watching him, I didn't watch him live, but where you would see he was in every play. If he didn't have a play on the short side, he'd jar back to the open to find a spot for himself. So that's where I see the KP was obviously the difference. Where did you see it? You were there live, Mitch.
Yeah, the Knights were great from the start. But yeah, KP, he's played more first receiver than he's played pretty much for a long time that we've seen. There's obviously some really good coaching there, and there's been a lot of hard work that they've obviously been working on behind the scenes at trying to find their niche. Obviously with Fletcher Sharp there, who's just we compare him to a Munster type player where he's just plays off the cuff. He's got super speed. So they're letting him roam a little bit, but obviously with Jack Cogger there, who's more that steady game manager, good organiser. They're letting KP take the reins whenever he wants. There was a try there early when the Knights scored in the right hand corner, but KP kind of skipped across sort of five or six defenders to create an overlap. Played down a short side on the left where he was the first receiver as opposed to being out the back. But as you just said then, he was also on two shots of every set. He had a couple of try assists on both edges, being out the back as a traditional fullback. So he just had his hand in everything, and it was great evolution of Kalen's game to see him take that kind of ownership and still keep his composure. Nothing looked flustered. So, but yeah, he was awesome. And when the Knights are on like that, you see the contest. Obviously, the two Safidi boys playing against each other for the first time. They would have loved that. But their contacts from the first tackle of the game to all game, they were going after each other. But yeah, when Jacob and Tyson Frizzell, these type of boys for the Knights, when they're going after sides, the Knights are a top 8 side. They're a top 8 side. At home, they play like a top 8 side. How they play on the road and dealing with all that sort of stuff during the year, we'll wait and see. But when you watch them at home and they're Kalen's calling the shots and their forwards aim up, they're a fucking good side, the Knights.
Yeah, the good signs for me is that obviously they've moved Fletcher Sharp to 6 this year, and it's been a success, a massive success. But you watch the changes in games. You touched on Kalen was first receiver a few times, and Fletcher Sharp was out the back. But one of their tries, Fletcher Sharp was at 7 and played a nice little block play to Kalen out the back. So it shows that he's got the ability to play that sort of style of footy. Listening to even the commentary, they were talking about Fletcher Sharp was a 7 coming through at Cessnock at the Goanna. So there's obviously good signs. I think at the end of the day, he's an out-and-out football. He's a competitor. He knows how to find space, and he's not worried about getting tackled. He pushes on every moment. The Dolphins, they looked it was like they were waiting for the game to come to them. We spoke about Katoa last week, that he was just very predictable, and it was very similar on the weekend. The 2 times he carried the ball, he pushed his nose through and got an offload, and they scored. And the next time he took the line on, he broke through and scored off a nice dummy. I think he needs to. We talk about the evolution and levels in games. He needs to be a running threat. I think if he can become more of a running threat, he's nice, neat, digging the line pass out the back, because at the moment it's like they're predicting it, and out the back they're being very passive. I'm not sure if he's injured, but the hammer seems to, when he's catching the balls, bringing them back, he's just sort of looking like he's getting into someone, finding his front and getting down, where I'd like to see him sort of pick a gap and run to it, because he's faster than everyone else. But yeah, I thought there's signs for the Dolphins to get better, but you don't want it to be too late. I just think they feel they need to they need a bit of a rocket up their backside.
Yeah. They're in a funny position, the Dolphins. Both games, as you said, they've looked really rigid. I'm not sure if that's coming off Isaiah Katoa and the way he's playing, that he's creating that structure, or too much conservative footy, or it's the way that they're being coached, where it's around keeping it really simple and just focusing on building pressure. But they do. Like Katoa, as soon as Katoa let the reins down, he obviously got that little show and go to Nichols under the post, and then he scored the try himself. But besides those moments where he decides to go, they do. They just look really. They look like they got so much more to give. You look at Marshall King out of dummy half, Nikorima, and like you said, Hammer, he's been a little bit off. He'll come good, but he's been a little bit flat the first couple of weeks. They've got the game there with the forwards that they've got to really play an up-tempo style, play off second phase footy, and get off the back of their halves. So I don't know if it's a bit of a transition with Wolfie taking over there, and he wants to keep things really simple because he's trying to really implement that long game and building pressure we keep talking about. But yeah, I just love them to open up. We'll get to the Tigers in a second, but it was a bit of a sort of similarity to what the Tigers did in round one, and then obviously on the weekend we saw them really open up their footy, and it suited their players and their club. I'd love to see the Dolphins just loosen up a little bit. They're going to be in the arm wrestle with most sides. They're well coached defensively. Obviously on the weekend they were disappointing, but I think the mentality of opening up their attack will also help their defence.
Yeah, it's a big transition when the new coach comes in, and obviously there's always history shows that whoever takes over won't. It's a difficult year after, but the promising signs is for the Dolphins. They've got strike, as you said, once they – and it might be just teething issues of a new coach, new structures and how they play, but as you said, like for Isaiah just to let the reins off in different times. He did on the weekend. He's a big kid. He knows how to find a gap.
How's he let the reins off, in your opinion, Toddy?
I think he's still got to play his natural game of footy of being organised and stuff like that. But I think he's got to run more. And when I say run more, when a lot of people say, oh, their halves have got to run more, and then all of a sudden they just do hit-ups.
Yeah.
It's not about hit-ups. It's about knowing how you play footy. For me, if I was playing poor, if I wasn't taking a line, and I had worked out a way that I would create an opportunity for myself. So I used to jump, like I mentioned before, I'd sit on a short side, jump to an open, I'd have two middles out at post for me. I'd call a double cross, 72 I'd ask for. I'd hit the first guy or the second guy. If I hit the second guy, I knew I could have an option down the short side. If I hit the first guy, I would ask the second guy to be my lazy for the next play, and I'd have an eyes-up option of inside, outside, and hopefully the A would rush out to me and try and beat me, and I could come back on his inside. So you plan to run.
So that was creating for you, that was creating your momentum and getting you on the front foot? Was that the mentality?
Yeah, so hopefully that cross play would find a quick play of the ball, and then I'll give it. But what a cross play does, it gives you eyes up. If you play always sideways, you find yourself chasing the footy. When the ball goes away from you, if you're a half, you've got to chase it to get the ball. But if you cross someone, you get the ball in your terms because you've laid the position. I used to hate sometimes crossing someone and then they jag across the field and I have to chase them again because in my head, so obviously then as a half you've got to evolve. When you say to them middles, okay, I'm going to drop you under here, you've got to land when I tell you to. If I tell you to land just near the post, you've got to land there because I've got a plan.
Yep.
So I think if he can grow that in his game and his players around him help him, it just gives him an option to run, and he's dangerous. The two times he scored one of the tries on the weekend and put someone over from an offload. So the points come from him. So I think if he can have that with his ability to play square, and then the guys on the outside reap the benefits of that, and then all of a sudden the defence is like, okay, is he going to run or pass? Where at the moment they're just thinking he's going to pass. Where on the weekend he had the two opportunities, but I'd like that part to grow.
Yeah, I love that change of gears. Like you said, get up on the advantage line, change the speed so it's not always predictable for the defence.
The next team we're going to be talking about is the Warriors 36 over Manly 16. And a player that we spoke about last week and how he can grow from Vegas and what we thought he could do better. Metcalf on the weekend, he changed the way he went into the line. His speed was like he was going to run all the time. He was in the face of him. He'd get across, drop blokes under, or he'd play at the back. But he changed the way he plays, and that was a big difference. Obviously, being at home for the Warriors, some of their other players stepped up. I love that Chanel Tavita Harris scored on a running play. Like, it was a nice little, we spoke about, they always play from the middle. This time around, they jumped down a short side, and Metcalf and Harris link up together from just a simple block play, and he runs, backs his ability to run.
Yeah, Wayne Egan was great too, wasn't he? When he's on, he obviously creates that momentum through the ruck. We spoke about rolling the ruck. He was awesome with his big pack there, getting some momentum. But, yeah, the way the Warriors played at home on the weekend was the way we kind of imagined them to play coming out of the blocks in round one. They were obviously pretty stagnant in round one and played that really conservative, structured style that didn't work for them. And, similar pattern of what we're saying about the teams that had success on the weekend. They let the reins go. They got too much strike and speed and footwork across the park not to be causing teams, the defence, trouble. You know, with Roger and even their middles with Barney, Mitch Barnett, all that late footwork that they got. It's a dream. It's a dream forward pack and outside backs for any halves to play off the back of when you got momentum, and that's what they did on the weekend. They created momentum. We spoke before about Manly giving away 11 or so, 6 agains. There's no way you can compete when you're giving away that much possession and momentum to the opposition. And with a home ground advantage to the Warriors up there, it was a field day for Metcalf and his little mate outside him. So, yeah, it was great to watch the Warriors bounce back because that is them. That's their potential. Too fast, too big, too strong when they're on. And on the other hand, Manly were once again on the bipolar roller coaster. What's going on with them?
Oh, before I touch on, man, I want to touch on the Wade Egan part, what you said, and what that does for his halves. If he takes control, we know he's got the nice little slide hands around the ruck, and we've spoken about the Warriors' middles, obviously the Fish and Barney up front. Like, that there is a threat in itself, even if they're just getting the ball flat off the ruck and making their own meters. But Egan brought them into the game. But when you bring your forwards into the game, it then brings your halves in the game, because then all of a sudden their forwards aren't getting just manhandled, but they're playing on the front foot. When you create front foot momentum, the halves and their natural runners in Metcalf, more so Metcalf and Harris, is that it gives them a freedom to go, Carl can run here, but if I don't run, I've got an option to play. So I like that with Egan. I think if they continue to get better at that, the Warriors, because like we said, they've missed Tohu Harris this year, and they're going to miss him. And you can't just bring someone in like Tohu Harris. It takes time, but Egan's got the ability to play football from 9 and let his halves just sit back and assess what's going to happen in front of them. And even if it doesn't get to the halves, Wade Egan can roll through the whole 5 sets and then finish with a kick. So I think that's a blueprint for the Warriors to get better. And Manly, as you said, the bipolar roller coaster, it's just that was a concern. We spoke about the concern last week. If teams let Manly play the Manly style of football at Brookvale, how they play at 4 Pines Park, that if they get on a roll, they're hard to beat. But then when it's on the other side of the green, when a team can control that, holds the momentum away from them, they just early they show glimpses. Obviously, Olakawatu and Turbo down that right side when he scores the first try of the game. You think, oh, here we are, we're in for a big game again. But it just didn't. It can't always happen. It won't always happen because, as you said, the swings of momentum in footy. And if a team's good enough to do it, and where the Warriors were on the weekend, being at home, the influence of the ref, and it doesn't mean the ref's influenced by the crowd, but it's a hostile crowd. There's a packed house over there. So the 11-6 again are gonna punish your team, and it punished the Manly side on the weekend.
Yeah, well, Manly's a feel-good side, aren't they? They're a spatial team, and they want to just attack you from everywhere. And if you allow them to feel good, Cherry, Turbo, Jake Travojevic, Brooksy, if you make them feel good early, they're going to have a field day. We spoke about that a lot. The Warriors made it uncomfortable for them. Obviously, it was a fast start from Manly with Turbo scoring early, and it was looking likely they were going to blow them off the park. But the Warriors attacked. They were the attackers. They went after them at home and mounted pressure on Manly, and it made them. It created that ill discipline in Manly that we've seen a lot over the last couple of years. That when the momentum's not going great and they don't feel well, they lose their way. Not. It's too early to write Manly off. It was a tough ask to go up there after a big win. Maybe they were going in there thinking it was just going to happen again. Thinking that they were going to create space like they did in round one, and it was all going to stick for them. And then they had that bit of joy early. It might have softened them, but Anthony Seibot would have been pretty disappointed with the discipline in and around their ruck defence, and they've got to tidy that up because we know how good they can be, but it's going to keep holding them back if they keep having those errors around the ruck.
It's a tough trip to New Zealand, but isn't it?
Very tough.
Obviously, on the back of
good night out
them
after.
Playing. It's a great night out after. You pack your jeans before your boots half the time, but it's one of those things that Warriors are going to be up for it. They've had a long turnaround from Vegas. They've had time to lick their wounds. They've had time to get better. They're waiting for it, so they're ready to ambush Manly when they get off the plane. And a hostile crowd. There's a big crowd there. We know how the Warriors fans have up the wires. It's starting to build. Which is really cool for the game. It's cool for a lot of the teams, like their big crowds. Obviously, Manly's been getting the crowd yesterday. The Doggies, their crowds are good, but it's one of those things. It's a tough place to go, and if you can get that Warriors team to do it more on the road, they'll win more games. But obviously, the big story out of the Manly Warriors game is Turbo and Cherry. Cherry with back spasms and a sore calf, I think it was, and then Turbo's tight hamstring. If you're Manly, did they risk Turbo this week, or because they've got a tough game against the Raiders at home on Sunday afternoon? It's because obviously we know we've been in those positions before. It's tight and there's nothing comes up in the scan, but for them, they're going to have that eerie feeling of the previous years of when he's been out. Like the history shows that they don't go well. If you're the coach, do you play him?
Your heart sinks every time he goes down, doesn't it? Especially when they're talking about hamstrings, and you just want him out there. But it was a tough last 10 minutes for Manly, obviously losing those two boys, and then Jake getting sent off as well, 10 in the bin, which obviously put him under pressure there at the back end. But who knows how bad it is? It might not be as bad as expected. But do they rest him? They'd probably every chance. They're 1 from 1. It's a long season. Put him in cotton wool for a couple of weeks and get him back out there. I think from all reports, Cherries isn't too bad. He's a pretty durable player, isn't he? So hopefully Ches is good to go. And they always have who will they put in there? They'll put Garrick in there, won't they?
Tola can go back there. They've got Hopewadi and Garrick. They've got enough players that can fill it. It's obviously, at the end of the day, you said your heart sinks when you see any player get injured, but someone like Turbo, because we spoke about it round one, if you can get a fully fit Turbo for the whole year and what Manly can do. So,
Toddy, I've got a question for you, just about swings of momentum and how hard a challenge can be from week to week when you're coming off a really big win. I spoke about Manly, and there's a fair few sides that are in a similar boat about that feel-good team. We've been in sides when I just want you to answer a question of how hard it is when you're coming off a really big win. You go into the sheds, you feel like Superman, you've come off a 30, 50-point win and everything's stuck for you. What's the mentality that week or the shift in mindset you have to adapt to so that you come and build the house again from week to week? Because if you go in with the soft mentality of going off the last result, you can get punched in the face pretty quick in this game, can't you? And what's the mentality that was, in the best, most successful teams you played in, the best coaches? What was their messages following a big win like that to make sure that you had that steel from week to week?
Well, you get it over and done with after the first review on the Monday morning. So you do your review after the game or whatever morning it is, you do the review. You get it over and done with. You speak about it. and then you try and obviously galvanise the group to have their head switched on to perform again. And on the weekend, when you look at Manly, their first few sets, it was like, here we go again. They scored that try, turbo scores, and it doesn't always mean one player, or it could be the whole. It can be one bad apple in the bunch that sort of eases on and goes, oh, okay, well, here we go again. We've got that same momentum. That same bloke that is the bad apple makes a poor tackle. He doesn't run as hard as he would because he thinks it's going to be an easy night again. All of a sudden, there's a sense, and another player goes, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do that. And then it snowballs. It's a team thing, so it's hard to have everyone up. But if they're not up, then teams will start to sense that and it'll creep back in. And as you said, there's players on the other side are too good to not let the momentum swing. So if you give a team an opportunity for that momentum to be taken away from you, a player will take that. And I think that's what happened. But it's hard. It's hard to regroup all the time. And it takes the leaders to do that, because obviously the players that have been around the game and understand it. But then when you look at Man, there's a few young kids there. There's a few guys that like to play on the front all the time. And if they don't have that front foot, they need to learn how to play on that front, away from the front foot. So sometimes it's not momentum. Sometimes it's just that they're not comfortable playing any other style. So that's and we spoke about that. That's a concern for Manly, that when they're not on the front foot, how they play their footy and how teams can counteract that. And I think Warriors done that really well. One, being over in New Zealand was always going to be a challenge, but it's a good question, because the great teams continue to do it week in, week out. And then you have a look at teams that don't do it week in, week out, are the ones that have got those teething issues around those areas. You said the ability to mount pressure when you've got the momentum to stay up. So it's a really good question.
Well answered, brother.
Thank you.
It was always such a challenge week to week, wasn't it? As a halfback especially, when you came off such a good win and you felt bulletproof and you went to bed that night or started the week on a Monday, you felt really creative and you felt good about yourself. And there was that many times I got my pants pulled down the week after, a bit complacent, bit cocky. My conversations all week with my back rowers was about attacking plays, and then all of a sudden, haven't had the ball for 20 minutes, the other opposition's ambushed you, and then all of a sudden it's a rude shock that, you got to get back down to the dirty stuff, the kick chase, you're making your tackles and building pressure and playing the long game. So it was really well answered from you then, but it was from a halfback's mindset and from a whole club's mindset, team mindset, but especially halfbacks, it's such an important role to play of being that leader to set the mood for your team from week to week, wins and losses, because it rubs off on the rest of the group. And you see that, as you said, in the best sides. You talk about the best teams from consistency, the greatest players of all time, Melbourne, Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, regardless how they played the week before, they'd start every game the same. Building their game off kick chase, kick pressures. They wouldn't go looking for the trick play. They knew that would come off hard work. And it's a good tip for young halves as well, that don't be fascinated with the trick play. Don't go searching for things just because it's worked before. You've got to earn the right to get your moments.
Like I say, the upset of the year, upset of the century, or upset of the decade they're talking about. The Roosters 38, Panthers 28, and it was one of those games that you're sitting there waiting. What is Penrith going to go out and blow the Roosters off the park? But it was the complete opposite. You spoke about Robbo, and he would galvanise his team and get them up for this game, and it was a Roosters ambush. We talk about a blueprint to beat the Panthers. Is this the blueprint to for the other teams moving forward to beat the Panthers? I've got a few things that I noticed from the game that was very surprising, that obviously played into the Roosters' favour. But a massive win for the Roosters.
Yeah, it was a huge win. Obviously, we spoke about the great Trent Robinson's coaching and that he'd be unfazed with all the criticism and the way that they played in round one. But yeah, look, the Roosters went there. I think they've lost their last 10 to Penrith. Haven't had much success. That's a lot of trauma in the back of your head. But I think from the way that they approached the game, and obviously Robbo's coaching. They went out and just went out all out attack against the champions. It was the only way to win out there, being the underdogs. But they went out all out attack, high energy footy, led from Connor Watson, who got 2 tries. Teddy, obviously, who just always does what Teddy does. But those two in particular, for me, Angus Crichton was huge. They set the mood. They went after him with no fear. And some of the footy from the Roosters, we don't see Penrith get their edges pulled apart too often. And, a lot of their tries came around on the edges. Scored a couple through on the inside shoulders of Penrith too, which uncharacteristic, showed where Penrith's head was at in this game. But Roosters moved the ball really, really neatly. I thought Sandon Smith played a big role in that. He was really big off the back of some good go forward from his middles. But it was one of the greatest wins of all time, I think, for the Roosters. It's a big call, but the circumstances, the pressure on the club, Lindsay Collins pulling out late, Victor Radley out, 2 of their enforcers on the back of obviously all the players we spoke about them losing. But yeah, it was. You talk about a blueprint. You could probably have an argument. Penrith had an off day and nearly clutch a win from the jaws of defeat. If it wasn't for a Daniel Tupou tackle in the last 10 seconds, but the blueprint for me was you can't play against Penrith with any fear. You got to go after him. You got to ask plenty of questions. I'm here to keen to hear what your opinion is on what you think is the way to get them. But for me, you got to approach it with an all-out attacking mentality. You know that Nathan Cleary is going to come. He can chase points from anywhere, and they nearly did it again on the weekend. They're going to come up with you 20, 30 points a game. You've got to counteract that with good attack, and you've got to ask questions, and you've got to out-enthuse them in every area, and that's what the Roosters did.
Yeah, and it leads me to what you're talking about, the attack and ability to play footy. And a lot of teams always go, okay, well, there's parts in the field, so you got your red zone and green zone, and when you hit the green zone, you're playing footy. But from the weekend, Roosters played football out of their own end, and there's always a risk because you can get dished up, you can get pushed sideways, or you can get thrown out the back. But on the weekend, they took their opportunities to play football out of their own end, and it created momentum. It shocked the Panthers. They weren't ready for it, and they stuck to that. But then when they got down to their green zone, they threw different shape at them. Yes, they stuck to the traditional block play a few times, but they done it from that wider point where centers were being the block play. Teddy was tighter to the back row, so he was outside of the back row, not deep or longer from a long point, and it caused Penrith troubles. The big Mark, how do you say his last name?
I know, it's a tongue twister. How do you say his last name, our man?
Nwanga Nitawase.
That's so
Nwanga Nikitase, whatever. However you say it, sorry, brother, but
what a player.
What a player. Like his sleight of hands, but they just threw different options at the Panthers, and the Panthers struggled with it. But the one I will talk about, and I'm not sure if it's that Sandon Smith and Chad don't have as long as kicking game as other halves, but they brought Penrith's back three, you say, into the game, but out of the game also, because on their kicks, every time they kick the ball, instead of kicking it long to the right corner or left corner to the middle of the field and letting Panthers back three, which are great ball carriers, because wherever they hit, if they kick it to the 10, they're going to fall back. They get back to the 30 anyway. But on the weekend, they were putting the ball up and making a contest. And Roosters' back rows were flying down, making it a contest. So every time they were catching the ball, they were either contesting for the ball or just as Dylan Edwards or Toto or McLean were catching it, they were making a tackle. So, yes, the ball wasn't as long, but they were making a contest. If they didn't get the ball or there was a mistake out of it, the Roosters would get the ball back, or then Penrith would get the ball. So they'll finish in the same position. And I really thought...
You reckon that was intentional?
I think so. It looked like it was, because every time they kicked it, it was happening. And what it would do, where you look at it, we talk about the Panthers when they're not so structured, but we talk about they've got systems. So if they kick to the right side and Dylan Brown brings it back and he lands in the 50, they will have a call of what set's going to happen. But if you wreck that, or if you change that for them by just putting the ball in different spots of the field, it's hard for them to fall into their system, because they're catching the ball in different areas where they usually, when it's a long kick, they catch it and bring it back, and Dylan Dylan Brown finds space or finds a spot on the field and they play from that. So they'd have a call. So if it wasn't, well done to the Roosters. That I felt that's what gave them the blueprint to get in front and win that game. As you said, Panthers nearly clinched it at the end, but it's a massive win for the Roosters. And we spoke about them last week. We spoke about a few times where they go from and how they build. But I think that builds their season. I'm happy to have egg in my face. I thought the Roosters would have got touched up by the Panthers, but this is when you sit in a chair like this and you talk about games, you're bound to get egg in your face. And well done, like listening to the players after the game. And we speak heavily about Chad on here a few times, but listening to his video and after the game was one of the biggest wins he's had. And Chad's won grand final, so it's a massive push to show that how much that game meant to him. And I think it's going to put him in. And they'll look back on that game throughout the year, and it could be a kickstart to their season. So well done to the Chooks.
Yeah, great win. It's really interesting what you're saying there about the kicking. I'm gonna have to watch the game back. I've sort of noticed it a little bit, but it'd be great to hear from someone inside the camp if that was an intentional game plan, because it, as you just said, it was definitely effective. You wonder if any other side over the next couple of weeks is sort of going to use or steal that idea. And yeah, I'd love to hear if it was intentional.
If you're listening, Chatty, I know you asked for questions. I might jump on your potty page and ask you the question, was it intentional? But obviously another big news coming out of the games on the weekend is Dylan Edwards' groin. I'm not sure how bad it is. I haven't heard anything yet. But if he comes off the field in a moment like that, it looks like he might miss a couple of weeks. And he's a big loss, but also what it does is it gives you a look of what the Panthers have got sitting in the wings. Obviously, you got Dane Laurie will probably fall straight in that fullback position, but it's definitely going to be a loss for him. But the Panthers are human after all, I guess, and well done to the Roosters if that is the blueprint to show them on how to pull their pants down.
Yeah, just huge night for the Chooks, and it'll be a massive thing, big weight off the shoulders coming off round one. There would have been a pretty tense energy there during the week, you could imagine, and everyone was writing them off, and as you know, those kind of wins can bank you. They can kickstart your season, and especially with the players that they've had out as well. It was a memorable win, and the fashion that they did it in, they didn't just grind to win, and they went after the game with, like you said, a great strategy and a great attack. So hopefully it's a kickstart for the next couple of weeks and really build some momentum. A couple of more players coming back into the squad, and guys like Chad and Sandon Smith growing confidence off that and even playing better footy over the next couple of weeks.
And the new Iceman of the NRL, Jamie Humphries, what a kick on the weekend.
He's a gun.
25-24, South beat the Dragons. And there's a few good talking points here. We've touched on the Dragons a little bit, obviously, when we spoke about it at the start. Haven't registered the win yet, but the positive signs for the Dragons, their big signings over the off-season have been very in everything. Well, like Gutho's a big one. His plays out the back, his last pass, his pass and offload on everything. He's got his hands in most of their tries. Also, Valentine Holmes was in everything. Big Tua Pilotu just barnstorming through the middle. So, as you said, that for the Dragons, they've got strike, but at 24-12, you're home and hose if your Dragons are in your mouldy. But South, you can't write him off. Cody Walker, does he have one of the biggest influences on teams, do you think?
Yeah, undercover too. He doesn't get the sort of, doesn't come into the conversation of guys like Mitch Moses and Nave Cleary when they're out, but especially over the last couple of years. But yeah, his influence, he just changes. We talk about playing with different gears, a bit of what we're saying about Isaiah Katara up there at the Dolphins, but he's only young and raw, obviously. But if he wants someone to learn about how to play different gears and how to bring everyone else around you onto the field and onto the ball, watch Cody Walker. Whether he's attacking around the ruck, running himself with show and goes, he obviously scored that nice try, or bringing his centres into the play. His vision and his feel for the game is just next level. One of the best we've ever seen. Probably the closest we've seen to Cliff Lyons, really. And he's such a pleasure to watch. And for a guy that's 36, most guys are slowing down and losing their speed, where he's obviously lost a little bit, but he just keeps finding ways to get across that field. Humphries,
massive congratulations to Cody for going to Humphries. Is 100 tries.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
For someone that debuted at 26. I'm not sure how many games he's actually registered, but I love watching him play. And we spoke about if he was going to be start the season and where they would be, but a massive effort to Cody. I love watching him. He's a competitor. He's one of those blokes, every time he gets tackled, he's in their face.
Oh, yeah, he loves to spray.
What are you doing? Yeah. Well, yeah, talking on Jamie Humphries, like, wow. It's crazy, but he's out to be going, well, if I didn't have that trial and didn't play the way I did in that last 10 minutes in that trial, I wouldn't be in this position. And he's just took it with both hands, and he's obviously reaping the rewards where everyone's talking about him, how he looks, how the size of him, how chiseled his body is, but his footy's doing the talking. And just the way he kicked that field goal on the weekend, it's just well done to him.
Yeah, well, he's so steady. He's a solid defender. He's obviously, people joke about his body size and his biceps, but it helps him. He's a solid body. He's resilient in defence. He makes his tackles, and you talk about what Cody Walker wants inside him. He just wants someone that's steady and that's going to give him opportunities and organise the set so that he can create space. And that's what Humphries is doing at the moment. And on top of that, he nails one of the best field goals we've seen all season. I was going to say it's round 2, but off the back foot, it's about 30
just
out.
Cool.
Yeah, it wasn't really prepared. It was a bit of ad lib too, and he nailed it. So it takes a lot of composure, especially as a young kid, to do that. And yeah, he was awesome. For the Dragons, they blew this game. They had a nice lead there that we spoke before about closing the game out, and I thought they let this one slip. But South keep asking questions, and their trial form was quite underwhelming. But for the first 2 games of the season, it's vintage Wayne Bennett. He's got him up. You talk about attitude at the start of the show. He's got his team's attitude 100% every week. They're doing all the dirty things well, and 2 great wins for them, which was probably unexpected.
Massive wins. And I guess there's always, and the halves are the ones always in the talking points after losses. And Flano was asked to comment about it, and he didn't really say too much about it, but does the pressure start to mount on their 6 and 7 in Flanagan and Elias? Or
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, there's pressure there. I think there's some really good stuff with the ball. That left edge we spoke about before. I think Flano's doing some really Kyle Flanagan's doing some really good stuff there. He's coming up with some nice steady plays there with Gutho, and we spoke about Lalua and Valentine Holmes there on the left. He's doing some really good stuff. There's some sharp footy there. But we also spoke about building pressure and having that foot on the throat mentality, and that does come back on the halves. When you're up by 12 points with a short period of time to go, you need to close those games out. And the coach would be angry at that from the whole team, but especially his halves. But they'll learn from that. But you need to be closing those games out. How do you close games out? You need to take control of your team's discipline in those periods of the game. You need to kick them to death. You spoke about long kicking game. You need to be making the right choices under pressure in those periods of the game, and they didn't do that on the weekend. And Cody Walker preys on that. That's his bread and butter, isn't it? When Cody can sniff an opportunity or a bit of lack of direction or a team not really having their foot on the throat, he comes alive in those situations. And from credit to Humphries and Walker for finishing the game off, and obviously Flano and Ilias, they're going to learn a lot out of that.
Yeah. I know it's only round 2, but obviously their superstar fullback Latrell's out. Jai Gray, does he stay at fullback? If you're Wayne, do you keep him at fullback when the Latrell comes back and you find a position? I would not find a position. But when you say find a position, you've got Jack White and Campbell Graham in the centres. Does one of them move to a wing? Does Campbell Graham move to wing and Latrell go to a centre? Obviously, it's hard to say, well, look, obviously Jai Gray's performing out of their skin, but if you throw Latrell in there, how would he be performing? Obviously, we know what kind of a player he is. Latrell's one of a kind. He's a superstar. But is Jai Gray doing enough that you can't you can't move him. You have to put Latrell in a position, and it takes away the workload if he does go to a centre. Obviously, I'm not sure how his hamstring's tracking along, but it's up for debate.
Yeah, it's a great conversation, isn't it? Obviously, like we all know what Latrell is. Latrell in the centres in big games is as good as any centre in the world. But then also as a fullback when he's on and he's playing, when he's got that eye of the tiger, we spoke about Kalen, he's also so effective there. What you lose with Latrell, you gain a lot of as far as Jai Gray in every moment. He's definitely a busier player than Latrell. Support play, energy in support around shot for shot sets in good ball. He's a busier player. It's hard to compare the two. Like, let's be honest. I think Latrell's influence out the back, if he's got that, he's in the moment. He's definitely way more effective than a Jai Gray off the back of his physicality. Sorry, bro, I'll just start there.
What you got the giggles for?
Someone's just walked past. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, giggles.
How do you? The argument would be, can you have them both in the side and sort of have that rotation role? But I don't know how that would look. Obviously, Jai Gray is not a player that can probably play, centre or wing. I'm sure he could play on the wing, but the size of him's probably not going to be as effective. If you wanted to sort of rotate them around, we spoke before about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and Mini playing that type of role at the Roosters back in the day, and how effective that was. I can't really see that working for him. Having them both out there. If Latrell's back at fullback, Jai Gray off the bench as a utility, I think it'd be great. Coming in off as a 9 even, or covering halves if there's an injury, it'd be great in that role. But it is a good argument because, as I said, what they lose with Latrell's influence and presence and size, they gain in effort areas and touches and energy. But yeah, a fit Latrell around the ball off the back of Cody, I think is the way to go. But it's great they got depth there, and they've got a lot of depth this year. South, they sort of come in underestimated,
100%,
but they got some great depth.
The master coach Wayne Bennett will have a plan up his sleeve.
What do you think,
Todd? Comes.
What would you do?
It's a hard one. It's because obviously we don't know how they'd perform and if Latrell's there. So I'm with you. Like I think if you play Latrell on the centres, he's going to be one of the best centres in the world. If you play Latrell at fullback, he's going to be one of the best fullbacks in the world. It's one of those things. It's one of those things for me and you can't answer. It's up to Wayne how he does it. I just think the way they're playing with the Gray at fullback, it would be if they continue to win. That is, so if in 6 weeks' time they're 6-0, I think there's an easier answer to the question. But at the moment, I'd play Jai Gray at fullback and I'd put Latrell in the centres and maybe move Campbell Graham to the wing.
The only risk of having Latrell in the centres is when he doesn't get enough ball.
Yeah,
that's it.
But I'm sure Cody Walker would find a way to get in the ball. One thing I will have an opinion on is, and he's mentioned before, is the Sharks. They will fly under the radar again this year, and they have in the last 2 years. And they're impressive again on the weekend. Their outside backs start their sets really well. They've got some big outside backs, and I like the way they're playing. Obviously, they've got their big middles in Fanua Blake this year. Hazleton pulled out with back stiffness on the weekend, but they've always find someone. They've got depth in their middles. They've got big guys on the bench. But it's their back rows for me. They terrorise halves. They make their job hard. They know they're in for a game defensively, and then on the other side, when the halves are attacking, that they hunt in everything. Their back rowers, their kick chase and their kick pressure is unbelievable. And I just feel they're finding their groove, like Nico and Trindle. While they don't always have big moments, they're in the game all the time, and they're just going to continue to get better. And the Cowboys were poor, but I like the Sharks. They always fly under the radar. They're always spoken about in a negative way. And I don't know if it's because Nico's there, but he always cops a bad rap, or not a bad rap. They're always questioning, is he playing as well as he should be? Well, they're 2-0. Who cares? Yeah. 2-1. Sorry, they lost that first one.
What I love about him, Mulatano, Jesse Ramian, Kennedy at the back. He's obviously not as big a body, but they just got so much size and speed, and they can hit you from anywhere. And obviously, you just touched on Nico and Trindle there. They're seasonal players during the year. Let's see how they hold up at the back end of the year. I'm sure they'll do well, but from seasonal players week to week, they're some of the best in the game, and they've got great combination there. Cronulla's great to watch. Some of their tries on the weekend, they were making line breaks on the right, and hitting the other edge with a couple of nice passes, getting their centres early ball and scoring on the opposite side of the field. So it's all there for Cronulla, and as you said, Hazelton in the middle, the pack that they've got, Fanua Blake, they got the side there building to a premiership. It's going to come down to moments back end of the year, as we said, but they've done this time after time the last few years. From I think pretty much last year, if I'm correct, after about 10 or 12 rounds, they were on top of the ladder, or thereabouts. The year before, similar. So, Fitzy will know what he's doing there, and he'll know how to play the season out. They're going to keep racking up their wins against most sides, I think, and they look like a really connected group. You see whenever something good or bad happens, they're all impacting each other on the backside. So they're a united group, and that's going to take them a long way. We touched on the Cowboys before, though, that some of their edge defence on the weekend was so poor. They're on their heels on their try line. Cronulla scored a couple of tries in each corner, and it was literally Cowboys on their heels, not even getting off the line. So lack of communication.
It was like a training run at some tries, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really poor to watch. From inside pressure to then just lack of communication from centres to halves. So, they're in a bit of a world of hurt at the moment, the Cows. But, Cronulla just smoothing along very nicely.
I don't know. We talk about, obviously, we've touched on the defence of the Cowboys, and it's hard to even judge their attack because they're just not in the fight in either of their games because they've leaked so many points. So their halves are playing on the back of a beaten pack all the time. But when they get their fair share of ball, it's not clicking. Where do you see the Cowboys going? Like, they've obviously got Clifford still not in. He's been named at 19-21 the last few weeks. Is it time for Clifford to come back in, or is there a fullback at the Cowboys and move Drinkwater? Because Drinkwater's the only player at the moment. Obviously, Tommy Didden works his backside off. He's been getting put under pressure defensively. They're going at him because they know that he's the chief playmaker, or he's their go-to. So I feel teams are really making him work his backside off in defence, and it's hard when you're on the back of the beaten pack also to play the footy you want to play. But can they find something in attack that gets them out of this rut when they've got the opportunity to score points?
I'd bring Clifford in only because as a young half like Duffy, you come in and your opening to first grade's been horrendous. Not from a personal point of view, but from a team point of view. And when you come in and your opening couple of games is coming off the back of huge losses and just try after try from the opposition, it's a lot of burden for the kid. He's a great little player and he's going to have a really long career, but it's probably a smart move to maybe bring Cliff in. He's a bit more resilient as far as he's played more footy. He's been in the ups and downs of rugby league. Maybe bring him in's definitely going to maybe advance them a little bit, freshen Duffy up, take the pressure off him, take the pressure off the kid, not having to deal with this negativity that's going on at the moment. It's not good for the team or for him. But I don't think the issues there, whether you keep Duffy or Clifford's going to make a huge difference, or putting Drinkwater to the halves. To answer your question, I'd be keeping Drinkwater at the back. I think he's their best threat from there. But I don't think that's the issue. It's we spoke about it. You get your confidence off your defence, and when you're not in the fight defensively and there's a lack of confidence there, it's a horrible thing to be a half. And we've been in these positions as halves, so we've got sympathy for the guys there or any team that's in that position. And you understand that trying to create points off the back foot when you're mounting no pressure physically is so hard, especially when you're young, and especially when it's the energy of the group's just not where it needs to be. So they've just got to tighten up that defensive resolve. The advice to those halves would be just hang in there. Your momentum will come for you. One thing you can't do as a half when you're in this situation and the team's falling apart a little bit and there's a few issues going on defensively is go within yourself. You've got to be the energy setter. As hard as it is, it's really difficult to be in those situations because you take pride as a half that it's on you a little bit, defence and attack. You pride yourself on being the leader in that. So it can be a burden, but yeah, advice is stay clear, boys, stay creative, because the momentum will swing when your team swings. Keep staying in the fight and setting the mood for the team.
Yeah, and they'll get 2 quality players back this week in Jason Taumalolo got through Queensland Cup for the Cutters on the weekend, and obviously Jeremiah Neno will definitely probably fall back into that team. So they'll get some joy, they'll get some wealth of experience, some international players plus.
Who they got this week?
Just
they got this week?
They had Cowboys have got
Bronx. They got the Broncos.
Broncos
in Brisbane.
So it's a tough game, obviously Friday night for them, but what a tougher game. Not a local derby, a Queensland derby, to find your season. Like anything, I spoke about it before, not registering 2 wins. There's going to be pressure on the players, but there's also pressure on the coaches. And you never like pressure on the coaches, but I'm sure that the people who play, the coaches are waiting and the wins will be waiting to see how this unfolds. And hopefully for the Cowboys, they find a bit of form, because we know what they're like when they get that form. And hopefully the players I just spoke about, Nanai and Taumalolo coming back, they'll get that and they'll have a bit of joy over the next few weeks in their house, find a bit of rhythm. But I'm with you. I think Cliff comes back into that team, and it's not because that Duffy's been playing, but I just think Clifford's got more experience. And we talk about big kicking games, big boots, and Cliff's got that. I think he'll be able to turn some teams away with his kicking game. There were 2 teams on the weekend that fought it out. It was the Raiders and the Broncos down there in Canberra. We usually say down there in cold Canberra, but it was 28 degrees, a very different look for Canberra Stadium. Usually there's the hoodies and beanies out this time of the year, but it wasn't on this occasion. And the Raiders, they played to the heat. They ambushed the Broncos. They got the jump on them early, and just I want to give a big rap to Corey Horsburgh.
Oh, how good.
He was obviously in Origin a couple of years ago. He went through some, I don't know if it was the love of the game or if he had a love-hate relationship with Ricky, but there was talk that he was going to leave the Raiders. His form was bad. He had the incident in reserve grade where he got up throwing punches, and obviously that was not screaming out for help, but obviously he's changed his ways. His interview on the other night was perfect. He said they asked him what he puts his form to. He said that he was eating shit food, he was drinking piss, and he's got rid of that, and he's got it on a diet and he's off the piss. So well done to him, and he'll be if he continues his form, the Raiders will get better, and he'll be in a maroon jersey before he knows it again. So well done, Big Red. You're probably not listening, but I just want to give you a massive rap. And the whole Raiders pack. On the weekend, obviously Big Red led the way with Papali'i, but their new signing, what a player, Matty Nicholson. Hoskins was on fire. I commentated this game the other night. I gave Hoskins my 3 points, Matty Nicholson the 1, and Big Red the 2. So
all forwards.
Yeah, all forwards, which is unheard of when they win 32-22 against the Broncos. But Raiders, they're impressive. They're impressive. Ricky's got him up. He's on the sideline spitting and chewing his chew. But you see him in the huddle before the game, and you talk about games of footy. After the first 5 minutes, you know how a team's going to go. But watching the Raiders in the sheds before the game, just how tight they are, how Ricky, when he speaks, they're all zoned in on what he's saying. And that shows that they're buying into what his culture is and how he wants to play. And they're going really good. I like the Raiders. They're definitely in my top 8. Concerns for the Broncos?
Yeah, like you just said, it was a huge contest for Canberra, obviously coming off a great round 1 performance, but to come up against a Broncos pack that we spoke about how good they are, Carrigan, Haas, and all the big names that they got in their pack. It was a big challenge for Canberra, even though they were playing at home, to aim up against the Broncos. And, they just ambushed them in every way. They forced the Broncos into an erratic style of footy, coming up with plenty of errors. The Broncos, it was a few. We talk about teething problems. it could have been just one of those days where they were off a little bit of complacency after a huge game in round one. You spoke in detail earlier about mindset from week to week as an NRL player and how you deal with coming off big wins. They're still raw. There's no doubt they struggled with this last year. They struggled with repeat performances. But they'll be right. I think this could be a blessing in disguise for them. You come out and feel bulletproof after round one against the Roosters, and I think they came in not expecting a fight especially from the Canberra pack. I think they were backing themselves to roll down the field and have plenty of joy in it, and it wasn't the case. Canberra ambushed them and found some weakness. It led to Walshy coming up with Reece Walsh coming up with a lot of errors. I think he had about 4 individual errors for the game, and they struggled to get any momentum or any sort of set-for-set footy. So, I think it could be a blessing in disguise to the Broncos. As you said, they got the Cowboys back at home this week. I can see them really bouncing back this week, and with a high-tempo power game at home. But, Canberra just, once again, they ambushed the Warriors in round one, and they've come out and ambushed the Broncos, we didn't see that coming.
No, we didn't see it coming, but as we know, we always say when you go down to Canberra, you're in for a tough fight, and I feel for the Broncos that they just left that in the sheds. The Raiders ambushed their middles. While their middles still rolled forward and stuff like that, Broncos still had opportunities to win the game. Like at 32-16, I still said that there's still a game of footy to be won for the Broncos. Canberra had a lot of the momentum throughout the game. Broncos held them out a few times, and then Canberra held them out a few times. But there's the signs for the Broncos that what they've learned over the preseason with their 2 new halves, or their halves pairing, is that they've got an ability to play their left side and their right side. So when they go to the left side with Ben Hunt, he ices the moments they score tries. When they go to the right side, the same thing. Their big plays, their plays come on. What they're struggling with, I feel, at the moment is when they link together. So they're both really good sitting on their left and right sides, but when they link together, and I don't think it's Hunt and Reynolds, I think it's Walshy working out where he fits. Where before he can bounce out anywhere, where at the moment, if he goes to one side, he's looking for the big play, because when you play short side, or when you play at the back of your half on a shorter side, you're presented with an option to play longer or play short, where Walshy's first instincts a lot of the time is play long. And I think if he runs that back in to think run first, and then it will present itself the pass. The long pass always presents itself because the wing will either shoot or sit back. But I feel if he can just go back to his running game, instead of going in, even when he was coming out of his own end off a long kick, he was looking to play footy. And that you can't take that away. Can't coach that out of Walsh, because that's what he's an instinct player. But I feel if he needs to find his form, and it's only round 2, we're not questioning his form, but the errors he come up with is because he's trying to play too much footy. But then when I talk about the longer shapes, they just feel a little bit clunky. A few of their sets, they just fell into a heap, and all of a sudden it was play 5 they had to kick. So it's a good wake-up call, and you've seen Madge. I'm sure he would have been very vocal about it this morning, but they've got obviously a challenge playing at home again Friday night. Queensland teams always get up to play each other, and obviously the Cowboys will be in the video room this week and also on the field, probably just bashing each other, working out, seeing what Canberra done to the Raiders, Canberra done to the Broncos, and they'll try and do the same this week. I said, obviously, Neno and Tom Malolo coming back into that team. So I'm with you. I think it's a massive wake-up call for the Broncos, and they was always going to have those teething issues with the way they play. And you've seen those on the weekend. But I'm not worried about the Broncos. They've got too much strike to worry about them. But I think you've just got to put a massive pat on the back to the Raiders, and well done. I think if the Raiders can continue that, we always know they're going to be really good at home. But they've got a really good fit down there, and they've got a good dynamic of players. They're fast outside backs. They were without Tarpany and Xavier Savage on the weekend, so they'll fall back into that team again this weekend. So I'm liking what Ricky's doing down there. So hopefully the Raiders.
Oh, look how happy you are.
I haven't thought about it. It will never happen, but imagine me blowing the Viking the horn. So Raiders, anyone listen down there, just get us back down. I know it was a
You can
terror
create a
down
march
there,
from
but-
Goulburn to Canberra with the big
Well,
hiking.
a few years ago, I wasn't allowed in Goulburn either. So it's hopefully that the wounds I've caused down there, I've fixed them along the way, and I'll be able to blow the horn one day.
You're rebooted, brother.
A team that has rebooted, and a team that has rebooted massively over the offseason, Junior, is the good old West Tigers.
Oh, how good.
And 32-6 over Parramatta, and we've spoke a lot about Parra, so we'll touch on them a little bit, but I want to touch on what you spoke about at the start of this show, that the Tigers let the shackles off. Tell me how.
Yeah, well, I think we were critical of the Tigers in round one, as well as they stayed in the fight. They fell short, we thought, off the back of Jerome Luai probably playing that game manager style of footy too much. Benji actually came out after the game and said some really good comments that he coached the team to be too structured in round one. He really simplified it too much. And then, second round, they've just let the shackles go and they've really opened up their game. I think Buller, no doubt, was the X factor that allowed them to do that. They were missing him and Appy, obviously, in round one. And their influence was obviously a big part of the win. Buller was in everything from length of the field tries to you speak about Kalen before on shots, just popping up on both sides of the field. But yeah, the Tigers, they let the shackles down. It was vintage Benji coaching. This was the Tigers of old, 2005, where this is what we saw from the West Tigers. This was their identity. It was an all-out attacking style of footy, led from Benji. And with the group that they've got there now, we touched on it after round one. This is their best way. This is their best success. Their best success this year is going to come off the back of letting the shackles go and playing eyes up footy. They've got youth on their side. They've got speed. They've got really, really talented footballers in Galvin and Luai, Buller. Taruva, obviously, on the wing, got his 3 tries, but they're fast and they're strong and they're good footy players. So it was great to see them just let the reins go and without being negative, the Tigers are going to have their ups and downs defensively this year. They fell off 60 tackles in round one. There was still some weakness in and around their D. It was probably a game of both sides that are pretty poor in that area. The opening 20 minutes from both teams, 25 minutes of both teams on the weekend was quite poor. But, Tigers have got the formula there, driven by one of the best to ever do it in their coach, Benji. Let the shackles go and just play footy. And it was so good to watch. Great for the game, great for the fans. But our man Buller, he's such a good player.
So good. And I'm off to work after this. And Jerome Buller's a Keeper Park product, obviously Fijian heritage. But only 3 years ago or 4 years ago, Jerome was playing basketball.
That's crazy.
And then they picked him up in the league program and he's come from there. But we spoke about the signings over the offseason for the Tigers. Obviously, Jerome Lewis was the big one. Sunua Taruva. But Terrell May, your boy, 64 minutes, 21 hit-ups, 176 metres, 4 tackle breaks. This is a big one for me again. This is we spoke about 43 tackles and 1 miss. Again. Mate, it's...
When I say again, that was obviously round one and round two, 1 or 0 misses. I think he had 0 misses
he had
round
0
one.
misses round one on 38 tackles. This week he's done 43 and 1. He got through this work in 64 minutes.
And it's... the biggest credit or the biggest compliment you can give to Terrell is that sometimes when players leave a really strong side, an established team like the Roosters, and go to another side that's, let's be honest, probably not as star-studded and as good a system, they can get exposed a little bit. He's gotten better. He's playing great footy at the Roosters in a star-studded team. He's one of the best in the Roosters side last year, but he's gone to the Tigers and improved, playing bigger minutes, as you just said, missing nearly sweet fuck all tackles.
No, it's just...
He's been unbelievable, and he's a rep player, Terrell. They said, he was lurking around the squad last year. I think our mate Mitchie Barnett got the nod, and rightly so. He was outstanding, but Terrell's name was getting thrown around in that Origin game, 2 or 3 with Mitch Barnett.
If he continues his form, he'll be in the blue jersey this year.
Have to be.
Has to be. It can't be. It can't be ignored.
No.
And if Tigers win games, continue to win games, or they should. I believe if Jerome Buller and Api Coruscant played round one, they beat Newcastle
for sure.
So there's great signs for the Tigers. As you said, there's always going to be some down moments with their defensive stuff. But I think if the nucleus of their good players, the players they've got around them can only get better. They're not going to get worse. So they're good players obviously need to get better or stay how they're going. But the players around them, that infectious the way they're playing. And as we know, Tigers have had a very big struggle in the last few years in winning games. Winning games builds success, or it builds a really good culture. So if they continue to win games, it's going to be a really good season for the Tigers. And it's obviously it's a waiting game to see how long they go, how it progresses. But early signs, it just shows that they're in for a really big year. A bigger year. Let's say then they're not going to be sitting and getting the wooden spoon this year. That's one thing that I'm going to say.
We know what the great thing is about the new players, what they've added more than anything. You know, we talked before about Duffy at the Cowboys. We spoke about performance trauma. You know, when your team's not going well, how much of a baggage that can have on your squad. And it's no different to a Tigers squad when they've, you know, had repeat trauma of losses year after year after year. But I think the situation that's different for them this year is these new players. Jerome Luai's got no trauma. He's just an out-and-out winner. Terrell's just got full of self-belief. Buller, for me, just plays with freedom. Taruva's just a confident player. Galvin, even though he's been in that system last year, he plays without the shackles.
He knows how to win. He's been a winner through his schoolboy footy stuff. So last year was his first year of understanding what it is to get beat.
Yeah, and he didn't get bogged down by it, did he?
No, he didn't get bogged down because if you look at performances for the Tigers last year, in a beaten team each week, there was always a shining light, and that was him.
Yeah, 100%. And that's you spoke about shining light. That's the Tigers' shining light. They need to jump off the back of these boys that are winners, that are play with the freedom and live with the freedom, you know, and there's none better than that than Jerome Luai, and that's why they've signed him. But they need to jump off the back of that and just have a mentality of just all-out attack and blow teams off the park. You know, I know their coaches will be working on all the gritty stuff. You can see Benji's trying to implement that. That's not going to happen overnight, but their fastest way to success is just, play with confidence and just let the shackles go.
Well done the Tigers. I'm not going to go into the Eels again because it would leave on a sad note for what we're going to be talking about there. I want to leave with the Tigers on a high because the way they play on the weekend, I'm excited for them and I want to see them continue to get better. So well done to the Tigers. Their last game of the round was the Bulldogs up against the Titans, and a game that we're waiting to sit around to watch to see how the new 6 and 7 go for the Titans. While the Dogs blew them off the park early, they were running havoc. I like the way they play. They roll through the middle. They get the ball to their edges early and big kick out and big Hoskins on that right side. I like their structure. They're unfazed when they play like that. The Titans obviously got back in the fight by playing some football, but I think it will take some time for the Titans to get better. And not when I say better, they'll win games, but obviously our podcast is called 6 and 7, so we're always going to touch on the 6 and 7s. I think moving forward, when they get a win, it's going to be the halves will be spoken about. But if you want to talk about them moving forward and them being the long-term halves for the Titans, they've got a lot to learn about footy and when to kick. What kind of a kick, when to kick long, when to kick short, how to game manage. And that was always going to happen. But I think on the weekend you've seen what it's like when you've got two running halves, one probably natural fullbacks move to the halves. And when I speak about that is that, and I speak about it a lot, that when you go to 6 or 7 from out of your natural position as a 1 or a 6 goes to a 7, you lose your strength, and that's a running game. While they both had Campbell had 10 runs, Brimson had 7. but they were force runs. They weren't on the out the back of. So usually when you see Brimson and Campbell run, they're out the back of a neat play of a half, giving them space, running into opportunities. Where on the weekend their runs were forced or just off the ruck. So.
And that's a byproduct, Toddy, isn't it, when you're getting ambushed? You look at the scoreline, 22-0 at half-time. Joshy Carr and Kurt Mann and Jamin Salmon scoring straight through the middle of the ruck. Like, that's super bad alarm bells from a defensive point of view. And as you just said, the side effect to that, that's not purely on the halves. That's not the halves' fault. That's the middle's efforts in defence through the middle of the ruck. But when your team's leaking that amount of points, what's the byproduct? You're not in the game, you're on the back foot, and you haven't got any momentum. And you spoke about, we both spoke about the great Kieran Foran and the loss of Foz being out. He's obviously out with an injury at the moment, but there was talk of playing him off the bench even if he was fit. And this is the issue. Kieran gives them the long game. He gives them the direction. He can run even when he's on the back foot. They're down by 22-0. He's the one that's going to be able to guide your sets back to a positive position and build momentum because of his experience and the type of player he is. He's a tough, resilient half. So we spoke about this before the season, that this was going to be their Achilles heel. And the trial form where they played really well, it was all their way. A spatial game that suits their type of style of footy. But yeah, this was the test. This is the type of game where it was always going to put your Campbells and Brimson under pressure, and they got exposed. I'm not for any reason here, not for any means here, blaming them for the loss by any means. The defense through the ruck from the Titans was really, really poor for most of the game, and to leak 3 tries through the middle of the ruck is not acceptable. And we saw this a lot from the Titans last year as well from that defensive point of view. But yeah, it just reaffirmed the point. You need a guy like Kieran Foran in there. You got him at the club. When he comes back from injury, he needs to be in the halves. I'm not just saying that because he's a great mate. You need someone like that to guide a side that is not at where they need to be defensively. They need a leader like that to get him on the front foot and let Campbell and Brimson play off the back of him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I agree with you there. And then there's some positive signs out of it. Obviously, Big Tino, well done, coming back from his ACL last year. He got through 54 minutes, 15 hit-ups, 122 metres, 39 tackles, a few misses, a few poor misses through the middle, and their middles won't be happy with those. And it's always a dreaded video on a Monday morning when you know you've had a clean miss. And as you said, like Kurt Mann and Salmon just rolling through and scoring tries. The big talking point out of the game on the weekend is for the Dogs. Matty Burt and Kikau both injured, both with suspected knee injuries, not ACL. No one's talking ACL, but it's still a concern. Obviously, Matty Burton on the weekend in his glimpses and some of his plays he's just so calm. Like, he's not where you talk about halves that when you go to 6, you've got to have the ball in your hand all the time. You've got to come up with all these big plays. He just knows his role. Obviously, he's got his massive boots, so that's his artillery. But he just plays to the game plan. They roll to the 50. He gets a ball out the back, and he just plays early to Kiko, lets him play footy. He doesn't change that. He sticks to the process, and then he gets an offload on the back of that, and then it's his joy to run. I like the way they're playing. Massive rap to Toby Sexton too on the weekend. Obviously, it's always hard coming up against Shale Club. I know he played him a few times last year, but I thought he was really good on the weekend. He had a lot of kick pressure on him. He iced him, finished the ends of sets, and well done to him. But I think all in all, there's signs for the Titans to get better, but I think it'll be still an up and down season for them until they find what it is they're looking for from them 6s and 7s. If they stick with it, and I'm sure if they stick with it, they'll get better. But I don't know if it's long term for me.
Yeah, it's a big question mark on where the Titans are going to end up this year on the back of sort of probably that inconsistency there and how that looks, and obviously their defensive resolve as well to start the year is a bit of a byproduct, a bit of a sort of roll-on effect of what we saw last year. So. But yeah, I love what you were saying about Burton and the Dogs. they're cruising along nicely, aren't they? They're such a disciplined, steady team and so well coached. Say it every week, but and Sexton too. Our man Sexton's he's finding his groove there. He's going to have a super year, I think.
Yeah. Oh, the Dogs are going to have a super year. Obviously, there'll be some concerns this week around who will come in. They'll fill those positions well, but there'll be big losses if Kikau and Burton are out. But the Dogs have showed they've got depth. They've got players that will come into that position. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the Titans will struggle to find their way in parts, but they'll get some wins. That they play some exciting footy. It was well done to them to jag back 24 points, and they had opportunities at 36-24. You still like, oh, maybe the Titans can go and drag away and they'll pull a win out of this. But yeah, I'm with you. I think once Kieran's fit, it'll be interesting to see where they play him. I'd like to see him at 7. I wouldn't like to see him at 14. I think he's wasted. I think it's just a waste of a position for him to put him at 14. But I'm not the coach there. But yeah, that's a wrap for round 2, Piercy. Some, like I said, some blowout scores, some up and down performances, but the comp goes back to a level playing field. I feel round 3 is exciting. If I'm a tipster, I don't know where I start. But before we finish, I want you to give me your team of the round and your player of the round.
My team of the round, I'm going to go Canberra and your man Horsburgh.
Are you reading my notes?
Nah. Well, there you go.
Lucky, because I was going to bag you about sitting on the fence. Well, I can't change my decision because I'm out and out Canberra Raiders fan.
Don't tell me you're going Horsburgh too.
I've got Big Red. Here. It just says Big Red. And
we're aligned, brother, in so many ways.
I know, we're aligned. Just that energy builds together. But for any young kid out there, or even doesn't have to be a young kid, someone that's struggling with their form or even struggling with life, go over and listen to the Big Red's interview after the game on Fox Sports and talk about it. And it's not because I've gone that way and it's the way I live my life now, but it's an inspiration to show that if you make small changes, and people might say it's not a small change, but if you change small changes from having a better diet and getting rid of alcohol, it shows. And he's going to reap the benefits this year. He'll play Origin. So well done to Big Red. But yeah, if you need a spike on a Monday morning, go listen to Big Red's interview.
Yeah, the Red.
Over and out from 6th and 7th. And remember, this Wednesday, I want you to get your questions in for my footy nerds that will be answered on Thursday. For a great response last week, but we want some more questions. Piercy's going to answer the pyramid question, throw some more about him. I've got the spinning map here. This is what my head was like this morning. This is where it's at, and I'm going to press my finger on it. This is where me and Piercy going on holiday next.
Spain.
Madagascar.
Oh, even better. Actually,
we're going to Madagascar. So we are very weird. As you can tell, I've got a world map sitting in front of me right now. And, yeah, this is how we are. So get your questions in, ask us some questions. Doesn't have to be football related either. I want you to get deep and ask us some questions, some weird ones too. What Piercy's like behind closed doors, what he's like on Mad Monday, who knows? Just throw them at us. We like to talk.
Bring it on. Footy nerds.